Your assignment this week is to juxtapose or position your newly created character in a very simple setup with your chair. Of course, your character can have been based off of a copy of your original chair, but the important thing in this is to have some kind of material distinction rendered in this shot. And so, for example, here I just have a black metallic color on my chair object and a kind of subsurface material on my character object. Now, the important thing here too is to note that you can experiment with materials on any of the three objects in the scene, namely the character, the chair, or the studio backdrop. Those should be the only three objects in your scene. You'll see here I have my Cycles render engine with the GPU set on, and I'm just going to really quickly make a new material for this backdrop, because I think the backdrop is something that you could really experiment with quite wildly. So I have just turned the studio backdrop coloring here to a bit shinier, and I've made it a kind of yellow, and I'm just going to mess around with this a bit. But the idea is that you still want smooth shadowing in the background, so you might adjust the position of your lighting, but beyond that you can see that there are some reflections and shadowing on the ground which the studio backdrop can really help emphasize. And of course, the materiality you choose for your sculpted character or object is also quite important. So I encourage you to think about it in the overall coloring and the contrast between the three elements that you're composing. Now, on a second note, you can see that there are or you will rapidly find that there are a number of ways you could arrange your scene. The important thing is that you have some kind of relationship between the chair object and your character object. And even if they are kind of similar in their appearance, maybe they're twisting together or something, but you should only have two distinguishable objects through their materiality. And so they should be quite contrasting. No matter what you pick for this one, the materiality of your chair object should be different. But I encourage you again to play around with the different material settings and the lighting setup as well. If you want to really go wild with the lighting, I would encourage you to just give it a go. There are a number of different lighting types that you can position into the scene. So of course the default sun is a fantastic one, but you could also add in additional point lights and really quickly generate some curious lighting setups. So I've just dropped a point light into the scene, and I'm going to make it a vibrant blue. I'll pull it out of frame, and I might even crank it up. Now you can see the light is being reflected in the backdrop, so this would be a reason I want it to not have any roughness. It's because I want it to mostly be emphasizing the object. So here the sun is providing most of the lighting, but this kind of supplemental point light is emphasizing the shadows. You see, once I've cranked it up maybe too high, or maybe this is also what you want, I have a double shadow, which in general I would try to avoid. I would have no shadow or a single shadow is my recommendation. But yeah, that's the long and short of it. The rest of this will be up to you on how you do it. I encourage you to play around with the cameras. You may want to do a depth of field render, which you have to be a bit careful with when you're setting it up. I usually hop into shaded view, and that allows you to pick a focal depth. It can become much more obvious if you slide the f-stop down, and you can see exactly where the camera is focusing. And so here, I'm going to do this. You can also play with the focal length, which will kind of zoom the camera in. It's essentially like a zoom function on the camera. And voila. The depth of field is really just to give a bit more cohesive focus, right? It puts a singular point into the viewer's perspective. Of course, your scene could be arranged quite differently,